Hello.
Hi Rebecca, it's Beatrice.
Hi, Beatrice. It's Rebecca. How are you?
I'm good. Are you back from Hastings?
I am. We got back yesterday afternoon.
Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was really nice. We went to some little museums. We went to the Fisherman's Museum and the Shipwreck Museum,
Oh,
which I love little tiny museums.
yeah, me
They're
too.
just so good.
Mm.
They're just almost, yeah, I just think they're great. So, yes, we had a very nice time. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I had a normal work time, but
That's good, though.
yeah, that's
Normal
good.
is good.
No catastrophes, which is nice.
That's always marvelous.
Yeah, and you sent me a photo of a book you were reading.
Yes, I finished it now. I so enjoyed it. It's Rosamond Bernier, Some of My Lives, a scrapbook memoir. That's the full title.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because I don't know if you know her.
No, I don't know her at all.
Okay, well, she was half British, half American. Grew up in America, in Philadelphia mainly, but then other places. And sort of very wealthy background. And then she just has this kind of, well, I don't know if you could even say one life. She has this like incredible life. She gets married quite young and goes to Mexico. So she's like in Acapulco and Mexico City and like building houses with her husband and has this entire kind of menagerie of animals with her, which
Wow.
wonderful. I mean, wouldn't we all like a
Mm.
menagerie? And she meets Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo, and just she gets to know so many artists. And it seems to me from reading it that she's like a really brilliant guest. Like she's a very, which sounds like a weird thing, but I
Yes.
think she's like a very charming person and very engaging and very thoughtful, and she just gets to know loads of artists and she does all kinds of different things, and she goes to Paris and she gets kind of headhunt. She's in New York at one point and um,
So
ends
is
a
that
woman chase.
between the wars or?
Well, kind of just after the war, she, well, I think sort of like 46ish,
Oh,
she
okay.
becomes the first European features editor for Vogue.
Wow.
So she like goes to Paris in 46 with Eric, the
Oh
illustrator,
yes. Mm.
and to cover the first Paris collections post-war.
Wow.
And she does like amazing things with them, but then she's really like, she's mainly interested in art rather than, I mean, she's really sort of personally interested in fashion. So she gets to know all the major artists. I mean, it's insane. It's as though she knew every single artist you can think of.
Mm.
And so I just really enjoyed it because the book is kind of, it's called a scrapbook memoir, and I think it's sort of, most of it is sort of things that were half written for other things, for journals, or because she set up this art journal in Paris in 1955, I think, called Loy,
Mm.
which was in French and broke stories on all these like amazing art things. And so there's like loads. It's very kind of collagey, but that's sort of nice because it's kind of modern art that she's talking about. So it seems to sort of go that it's this collage of different experiences and different times in her life. And then later in life, she starts giving public lectures, and she wears her couture gowns to do that, which I think is something we should really consider.
Yeah, I think we
And
should.
I think so, and I wonder if there's a couturier who'd like to sponsor us in this.
Mm. I'd like to have a
Um,
couture jumpsuit, please.
oh, that would be so good.
Mm.
It would be perfect.
Mm.
If there's a couturier out there who would like to make you an array of jumpsuits,
Yeah,
that would be
I'd love to
marvelous.
hear from them.
I would,
I'm
get
ready.
in
I'm
touch.
ready.
We need to know.
Mm.
That would be so good. So she's just really fascinating, and I really love how, well, there's kind of really interesting things like Frida Kahlo kind of saying to her, "Oh, I'm going to sort of get you ready to, because she feels what she's wearing isn't zhuzhy enough." So Frida Kahlo, puts flowers in her hair and dresses her up. But there's also things that I really like because I really love Matisse. I just think he's wonderful. and it made me love him even more, because there's lots of times when she got to know him really well. So she talks about how he was really interested in fashion.
Oh, really?
And always took note of what she wore and would really appreciate it. Like, she would wear, you know, a particularly nice print dress or something when she went to see him, because she knew he'd enjoy seeing it and comment on it. And she goes to see him and she's wearing an orange Balenciaga coat, and he says, you must wear a yellow scarf with that. So he sort of makes suggestions, and she talks about how when he wasn't bedridden and ill, that he was very elegant himself and would wear sort of loose raw silk jackets, and he liked wearing a blue sweater and a blue tie to match his blue eyes, which I like.
That's interesting.
And
I wouldn't have thought that
nice?
about him.
No,
Yeah.
I know you don't kind of get that, but she said he was always very neat and put together. And I love this idea that he appreciated what other people wore as well. And apparently he would always go in the early days with his wife and daughter to Pourpoint when they went to get gowns. He would want to go with them and kind of sit in on everything. So I really like that, because that's something you don't really know about.
No.
Or I didn't really know about him. And I like the idea that he was thinking, I want things that match my eyes as well. That's really lovely. And he really appreciated flowers, so like she'd bring him flowers when she saw him. Whereas Picasso, not interested in what other people are wearing at all, not interested in his own clothes, lived in complete chaotic mess. But apparently when Gary Cooper went to visit him once in the south of France, he gave him his Stetson, which Picasso was thrilled with, and so spent the rest of the holidays just wearing the Stetson and white shorts.
Wow.
So that's quite a good outfit.
Yeah.
So I really like it that you get these little snapshots.
Yeah.
And like sort of Louise Bourgeois wearing kind of layers, and apparently had like all her clothes going back to childhood, but then would use them in her artworks as well, and was really kind of deeply connected, it seems, to sort of previous clothes, but also family photographs. And could get very emotional about them. So I love all those kind of little snippets that you get.
And
Sorry, go on.
Does she talk about getting couture clothes at all at some point?
She does, a bit. I mean, I have to say, for me, I really loved the book, but the one frustration is I kind of want to hear more, because she tells you about going to Paris and doing this and that, but she doesn't really go into massive detail. But there's really nice stuff about Balenciaga and going there, and how he liked her. She thinks because she talks about how reclusive he wasn't, he didn't socialise at all. But she says that she thinks he liked her because Picasso put in a good word for her as a fellow Spaniard. And so the vendeurs told her, they knew she couldn't afford Paris Balenciaga, so they gave her the contact details for the French textile makers where they got their textiles, and then told her which to buy, and then she took them to the Madrid branch of Balenciaga, which Paris Balenciaga said didn't have good fabrics.
Interesting.
So she took her French fabrics to the Madrid, if you're following me.
Yes.
Realise it's very common. Then they made it up for her in the styles that she liked best, that she'd seen in the Paris show. Then she took it back to Paris, and they said, they can't fit properly. So the Paris Balenciaga then kind of fitted it properly for her.
How interesting.
I know. It sounds very bonkers, but they seem to have been super kind to her, because they knew she couldn't have, afford loads, and so she got quite a lot of Balenciagas. And some of her clothes are at the Met, at the Costume Institute at the Met, because she donated them, and obviously, and she gave lots of lectures there as well. But isn't that funny about Balenciaga?
Yeah. And what did she lecture on? Did she lecture on art?
On art, yeah. There's a clip that I'll send you the link for, where it's part of her farewell lecture at the Met, because I think she lived to be 100, and she was still, kind of lecturing in her 90s, where she talks about the Balenciaga actually that is in the book. Which is really great. So yeah, and there's like an interview. There's sort of an interview with Chanel, which I found it's kind of very funny what she says about Chanel. It's when Chanel came back in the 50s.
Yeah.
So she sort of says about how nobody really knows what happened. You know, that obviously we all know that Chanel was living at the Ritz with a Nazi during the war, and that she was told to sort of get out because, you know, bad things would happen to her, so she went to Switzerland. The Nazi officer she had been involved with goes to Switzerland as well. She is at one point hauled in by the authorities in Paris, but, you know, 2 hours later was let out, and nobody knows what happened in those 2 hours as to how she was then released. But it's really funny, her sort of description of her, how she sort of gives this monotone monologue, Chanel, that you don't really ask questions, but how she's so sort of compelling that she, you know, she doesn't pause, she just keeps going, and that you just, you know, that she just, Rosamond Bernier was just kind of staring at her for the whole time, that she gave this sort of monologue. And she's interesting on Karl Lagerfeld as well, and how kind of amazing he is in terms of keeping track of everything and reading so much and everything else. But can I just read you, there's this one bit which I think is like the greatest excuse for missing a deadline that I've ever
Oh, I need that. I need that.
In the world. Yeah, write this down. Okay, so Andre Breton was supposed to write something for Loy, right?
Yeah.
And I won't read it in French, but the translation is, he says that, you know, so it's like, Madame, in spite of high regard for you, I regret to tell you that I cannot write your article. Why not? I gasped. Because I have been bewitched by an evil object.
That's fantastic.
Isn't that the greatest excuse
that's so
ever?
Good. That's so good.
Because I mean, how you can't break into that?
No.
How do you can't say, well, show me this.
Or don't be ridiculous.
Object.
You can't say that,
it's
really.
It's just so kind of intense. You're just like, okay, I understand. That's it.
Yeah.
So I was very, very pleased.
Oh, that's very good to know. I shall remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll send you it in French and English so that,
you
know, depending on which editors you're working with, you have it ready.
Yeah.
As a reason why you can't.
Oh, that sounds a great book. I really want to read it.
So much fun.
How did you come across her?
Well, actually, I wanted to say this lovely writer, Leslie Camhi, who is an Instagram friend, and she's also a mutual friend of Satish, my lovely Satish Padilla, who is my lovely colleague at the Court Talk. I had posted something on an Eric illustration some time ago, and she said to me, "Oh, there's a mention of him in Rosamond Bernier's book." So I immediately ordered it, and then it's just sat there in my great big pile of books to read. So I got it, and there's a really lovely interview that she did with Rosamond Bernier, I think in the 2000s, sort of about 5 years before she died, on Vogue.com. That's really, really good. So I have Leslie to thank for this, because I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, it really is. And how about you? What have you been up to?
Well, I went a bit mad on Thursday, and I booked in 3 visits in one day, which I'm not sure I've ever done. I don't know what got into me.
That's such a lot of work.
Yes, exactly. I hadn't really thought this through. So it went from, it actually was in reverse sort of date order in a way. So someone looked at 18th century altered things. One of these students looked at 1920s painted things. And then there were these 2 people, costume designers, who did some research for a film, which they were super discreet about. So I don't know what it is for. I have a suspicion, but I'm not going to say anything because I obviously don't want anyone to know. But what we were looking at was 19th century garments, and they were quite keen on 1860s. But bizarrely, menswear-wise, we don't really have 70s and 80s.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I sometimes wonder whether things are misdated because menswear is so difficult to date.
Yes.
But I don't think it is that. So I was wondering why it was. I'm not quite sure. I think that, I mean, there was a sort of quite a big change, but that's that still doesn't explain it. But anyway, so we were looking at, we did find some 1860 stuff, but we predominantly looked at male dress from the 1890s. So 1890s we have a lot again. Endless, well, not endless, but we have a lot of morning suits, excuse me, a lot of frock coats. So, and what always strikes me when I look at menswear, and I know that's a really obvious thing, is how many pockets they get. I mean, the craziest I think we've got is, we didn't look at it this time, but I love it. It's one of my favorite menswear things we have, is a 1937, 38, 39, I'm not sure, tweed country suit. So it's knickerbockers or even plus fours.
Oh, wow.
And a jacket and a waistcoat. And I think it has 17 pockets.
It's 17? That's
17,
incredible.
17. It's totally crazy. And the suit we looked at this week, there was one double-breasted waistcoat that alone had 4 pockets on the outside, and then you opened it up and it had 2 more big patch pockets on the inside, and that was just the waistcoat.
What were all these secret things
I
that
know.
men were having to carry?
So,
I mean, I suppose they would. Well, they wouldn't be carrying bags. Is that why they're just?
Yes,
They need somewhere to put their lipstick.
Yes, probably their pomade or however you say, pomade. I don't know. I guess, I mean, one thing is the watch, of course, because I think that's still pre wristwatch. I'm not actually sure when wristwatches come in. Is it during the First World War? I think it must be something like that.
Not sure.
So you need your watch, and then usually they have a coin pocket somewhere. Although I never quite totally get the point of coin pockets, because they always seem too small to put much in it.
Yes.
But then I'm not sure. I guess papers, money. I'm not quite sure. But it must be that, because they don't really have bags. But then women at that particular period don't really have bags either in a big way. I mean, they have small ones. But I guess, to me, it always seems to say men have important stuff to carry around with them. And women don't.
No.
Yeah. So I find that, I've always find that quite striking when I look at men's and at women's wear. And then we looked at some 1860s women's garments, and we primarily have, silk evening gowns, that kind of stuff. And they usually have at least one pocket, interestingly, but you can't usually...
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, you can't usually see it from the outside. You usually have to look on the inside, find the pocket bag, and then try and figure out how you get into the pocket. And this one, I just couldn't find it. And I think it was a pre-crinoline skirt with deep flounces, like 20 centimeters or more. And it was underneath one of the flounces.
Wow. So you really have to fish around.
Yeah, and I thought, you can't really do that in polite company.
No.
Would you lift your flounce? And
I mean, that just sounds filthy.
Yes, exactly.
Lifting your flounce.
Yeah. So
no lady would do that.
No. And you should, I mean, sometimes the funniest ones are the ones, I mean, I'd love to do something. I'm sure someone has done this already on pockets in 19th century garments. The most interesting ones are the ones in bustle dresses, because they're often in the bustle
dresses.
So they're at the back in the bustle, not necessarily easy to find. So again, and often they're quite long and thin. And for ages I couldn't figure out what that was for. And maybe it was with what the student group from you or another one. I said that I didn't understand why they had this weird shape, and then someone said they're for fans. And then of course it all made sense. But again, how do you get to it? Because that is even worse than lifting up your flounce, I think, is sort of half contorting yourself.
Rooting around in your bustle. Equally bad.
Yeah.
Equally bad.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I mean, and also, aren't the backs of bodices and jackets really tightly cut and like little armholes?
Yes, that's
so
true,
wouldn't
actually.
Reaching backwards be quite a tricky thing?
Yeah,
Would
that's
your
true.
maid have to fetch it for you?
I don't know. Maybe I did then wonder. Maybe when you sit down, it's a bit easier.
Oh, maybe when you sit down, it kind of lifts up. So maybe then.
So maybe that's how it works. I'm not quite sure. It's interesting. Sometimes even also the very tight bodices, they sometimes manage to fit in a little pocket somewhere. But that's quite rare. Usually there's just one. Usually
Yeah.
not two, just one in the skirt. And yeah, again, if they're not all these sort of long ones for fans, so I'm wondering what do you put in there?
Your handkerchief.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And is it the same with sort of more working class women's wear?
Well, we don't really have that from that period, so
Yes.
we have very few dresses. There's one yesterday we came across, which was very simple, sort of linen fabric, but we didn't actually. That wasn't what they were interested in, so we didn't actually take that out. But I thought I must take that out and have a proper look at it. And then I was wondering how this continues, this bag or not bag situation, and I just find it interesting that. I mean, a lot of men now do have bags. They have sort of rucksacks or satchels or something. But often men still get more pockets than women, I think.
Oh, they do. I mean, that's another reason why I love my beautiful mid-century American lady designers. Because they all do marvellous pockets. I mean, Claire McArdle, everything has 2 generous pockets at least, and there's the Vera Maxwell travel coat that you unzip the pockets on the coat, which are on the outside, and it has like plastic lining so that with little compartments so you can put all your makeup and toiletries in your travel coat. You know, there's like a Bonnie Cashin with a purse on the outside. You know, it's so good, so clever, and just everything as standard comes with pockets. Because even now, I mean, some brands are great and everything has pockets, but others it's like you really think this is stupid that this doesn't have a pocket.
Yeah, not a single one. Yeah, sometimes you get a dress and there's just nothing. And not an evening dress, sort of, you know, I can get that maybe, but yeah, it's very strange.
But then I really like evening dresses with a pocket because it kind of suddenly makes it much more nonchalant in a way that I think is very elegant.
And also, if I think about functions, for want of a better word, at the museum, I don't really wear dresses so much anymore, but when I used to, these days you sort of need to have your phone on you.
Yes.
And so you walk around all the time with your phone in your hand, which looks
it's
really
silly.
annoying.
And then if you have a drink and then you're trying to, it becomes very difficult very quickly. But once you've got all your couture jumpsuits, you'll be fine though, because you'll have pockets.
Yeah, no, then everything will be all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird that pockets were originally a separate thing as well.
Yeah, I don't know whether they always were, but in the 18th century, obviously they were. I was wondering about 17th century, but I don't know enough about that. But yeah, definitely. They sort of seem to go backwards and forwards. They sort of have, in the 18th century, you have the pockets underneath, and then they go outside, and then for a while, I think in the 1830s, 40s, I don't know, women, it sort of almost seems that women didn't have any way of taking stuff with them. And then, you get both. You get them sort of in the clothes, and you get small handbags. I was also wondering, but that's a whole other topic, why women have handbags and what they've got in them, and because I would be quite keen to not have a handbag anymore, but I
know. I mean, sometimes I love having a bag, but then I'm always trying to not have one as well. I'm conflicted because I like a nice bag, but then yes, it is better if you can carry most things on you.
And I was also thinking about, sometimes you see young lads, again for want of a better word, who wear super skinny jeans, but then they have all their possessions about them.
Oh, that's just so bad. So bad.
Yeah.
I don't like that when they have, like, it looks like they've got a bunch of grapes in their pockets.
Yeah, and foam and
I know, and it's just, I remember when I was in Sweden that there was I talked to this man who was like a denim designer, because they have so many nice denim brands there, and he was saying to me about how they, I mean, this is like about 10 years ago, that schnuff, it was called, which I think is like, what do you call it? Like tobacco that you sniff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was really popular with young men then. And so you could see that, and it came in like a circular tin, a small circular tin. And so you could see this like worn out ring on the outside of men's jeans, which was their schnuss, where they'd had that in there, which was quite funny.
Yeah. Or I remember.
No, I don't like that. I think men should think more about what they're putting in their pockets, because like it's not a good look. As you say, particularly if you have skinny jeans, and then you like you can see that they've taken such care with their outfit, but then they've just stuffed their pockets with all kinds of nonsense that then.
But then what are they going to do otherwise? I was trying to
have an attractive fanny pack.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That would work. I was trying to find something earlier. About maybe 5 years ago, I noticed in Paris, in the underground, that a lot of young, predominantly black men were wearing bags. And they were often, I think, Louis Vuitton bags. And they were very flat bags. They were almost like folded over with just a zip at the top.
Oh, I know the ones you mean. Yes.
And I was trying, and it did seem to be a thing, and I almost secretly wanted to take some photos, but then I thought that's not the right thing to do. And I've been trying to find out about that, but I don't quite know. I'm probably not using the right words, or I also think in France they're not so interested in street style or...
I don't know. I think I suppose you get some interesting street style, but also like an appreciation of, well, like think of rappers. A lot of them have good bag.
That's true.
Accessorizing. So it's kind of part of thinking about fashion in a more interesting way. And I mean, rappers are so influential in terms of menswear and in terms of being much, much, much more adventurous with menswear. Well, I'm going to Paris on Monday evening, so I'm going to look.
Yeah,
I'm going to
please.
Look.
And I didn't want to say that there isn't street style. It's more, I think people are not so interested in writing about it, but it, as I said,
I guess, yeah.
It might really just mean not, using the right words. So yeah, please do some research. When are you going, did you say?
On Monday evening.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just for a couple of days.
Oh, wonderful.
To see my friend, Victoria.
Oh, very nice.
Yes. So that will be super. And I'm hoping to see the Alaya exhibition and the Margiela. Because you know the Margiela, the Hermès Margiela that we saw in Antwerp is now at the Musée des Arts Décoratifs.
Oh, it's the same one. I didn't realise. I thought it was a different one.
I don't think I'll have time to see that one, but there's a big retrospective of his work at the Palais Galliera that I want to see.
Oh, you must tell me all about it next week.
I will. And aren't you going to Germany?
Yeah, so I'm going to report about the Jill Sander exhibition,
so excited.
Which I should just about manage to catch, but I might not have seen it yet by the next weekend, so I'm going on Friday, but yeah, I'll tell you about that.
Yes, I very much want to hear about that as well. Okay, well, it's been great to talk to you.
Yes, as always.
And as always, we make progress with our plans.
Yes.
For you to have a whole wardrobe of jumpsuits.
Yes. Okay.
All right then. See you soon.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
And you. Bye.